This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Michael J. Mooney. We're so glad to have you on Justice Pending.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fascinating conversation about the mysterious disappearance of Suzanne Simpson. But before we get into that, I'd love to talk a little bit about how we know each other, because this is not the first time that we're chatting. We've known each other for like 15 years, which is kind of insane. And, we once upon a time were both local media journalists working for D Magazine Partners. And I actually remember the first time I heard your name, we were at like a company party. I want to say like a historic hotel that maybe was rumored to be haunted. Is that ringing any bells for you?
I think I know. Was it at like a mansion at the Arboretum?
There we go.
Yeah.
So I totally remember that we were at this company event, and I think you had just recently been hired. You were going to be an investigative reporter for D Magazine, and they, had introduced you. And then shortly after that, you found a secret passageway in the wall.
Passage, yes,
Yeah.
in the library, like a bookcase literally moved. There was like a tunnel. Another reporter who you and I know was there, jumped into the tunnel, and it's this old, amazing mansion in Dallas. We probably should not name it because I don't want people going through the library to find the hidden passage. But yeah, I started joking, like, you hire me as an investigative reporter, invite me to your holiday party, and I will find a hidden passage in the library.
From that moment on, I was like, I have to be friends with this guy. This is going to be entertaining.
That's great.
Yeah, so you've written basically for every major outlet in America. Do you want to name drop a couple of them now for
A
listeners?
lot of them, yeah. As a freelance magazine writer, I've written for The Atlantic and GQ and ESPN Magazine, Outside, in Texas, D Magazine and Texas Monthly and Texas Highways, Deseret Magazine in the West, a whole bunch of other ones that I'm missing, Popular Mechanics. And this story that we're talking about today is the first story I did for Town and Country.
All right. And you've also written a New York Times best-selling book, The Life and Legend of Chris Kyle. And you have an Audible original podcast called Hold Fast, the unadulterated story of the world's most scandalous website.
Yeah, which is, I consider true crime. It's a whole bunch of things: true crime and business and media reporting, and really a story about free speech and the role of the government. And it's a real interesting journey.
Yeah, that was a wild ride. I definitely enjoyed every minute of that one. So listeners should go check out Hold Fast on Audible, and they can get to know a lot more about you and your career and the history of the Village Voice.
Yeah, and all weekly media.
Yeah. Unbelievable story. So back to the reason we're here today. Suzanne Simpson is missing. And you wrote about her life and disappearance for Town and Country magazine. And I actually heard the audio version of your story on Apple News Plus, and I couldn't wait to get you on Justice Pending to talk about it. I think I messaged you to tell you that I was listening to your article, and you were like, "Oh, that's out." Like,
I didn't even realize it was out yet. Yeah, that was great.
I love breaking news. So yeah, that was pretty fun. So what can you tell us about Suzanne Simpson? Who is she?
So Suzanne Simpson is a kind of beloved mother and real estate agent in San Antonio, who lives. Her house is in the nicer part of San Antonio, the Olmos Park, Alamo Heights area, which, if you familiar with Dallas, is kind of like the Highland Park, University Park area. In early October of 2024, She got into a very public argument with her husband, Brad Simpson, who is a kind of businessman in San Antonio who's been involved with I think over a dozen companies and a couple of lawsuits, and from a relatively wealthy family. The argument that they got into was at the Argyle, which is an incredibly exclusive, very private club in Alamo Heights that's housed in this kind of glorious old mansion that I bet has secret passageways somewhere.
Did you
Um,
get inside? I know it's pretty exclusive. Were they accommodating when a journalist showed up at their front door?
they were not.
Yeah.
They were very frank about how private it was. The word private was used in the conversation, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 times a minute. Um, and so the argument that Suzanne and Brad got into was at a dinner party there. By the way, the Argyle does not even list its members and won't confirm if somebody is or is not a member.
I thought that was a fascinating detail in your story that not only do they not list their members, they also don't list what the price is, what the
Right.
fee is to join or the monthly
Or how
uh
you become a member. Um,
right. So
and
super secret
yeah,
society, super secret country club extreme, right? You can't just put down your credit card and become a member at the Argyle.
right. And secrets kind of become a theme of what my investigation kind of unraveled. Um, So that was the last time that she had really been seen in public. She went to her grocery store after that. She left the party with their 5-year-old daughter. They have 4 children, ranging in age from 5 to 20.
Okay.
And so their youngest was with them. She took, the daughter with her, left the party. There's images of her leaving the party in kind of like a black or dark blue cocktail dress, nice, heels, and her hair is all tied back. It's a very nice social event.
Okay.
uh, Went to the grocery store, and then has never been seen since in public. The husband was arrested about 2 months later, but at the moment that we're recording this, Suzanne Simpson has still never been found.
Wow. And so tell me about the missing persons investigation. What are some of the things that were uncovered?
So it started, you know, within a day or two of her the last time she was seen. um, Going through the affidavits and the court documents that have been made public. They did a big search of like a public dump area. I don't think they found anything. They searched the family's house. They searched family ranch property in Bernie, about a half an hour away or an hour away. Um, and they searched a bunch of surveillance footage that tracked Brad's truck the next day and found a variety of things, including like what police described as a burn pit where some computers and cell phones may have been destroyed. They found surveillance footage of his truck at various times had some kind of suspicious things in the back, and then those suspicious things disappear at various times. Things like a big tarp, um, an ice chest, uh, and uh, and then the day after she went missing, he was seen at like a car wash washing what looked like cement off of his truck.
I remember reading in your article that he took a trip to Home Depot.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
tell me about that trip?
I can't remember exactly what he was asking for, but it was a lot of like a lot of things that you might be buying if you were, say, cleaning up a crime scene.
Yeah, it reminded me, yeah, of the murder kit. Whenever, I was a producer for 48 Hours on CBS, you would always see these frantic trips, usually to Walmart,
Yeah,
and they would just be buying the most suspicious group of items that you could imagine. So, Brad,
Clorox
yeah,
and cleaning
ex-
supplies, and I think there was like a bug spray or something.
yes, yeah, insect repellent, Clorox disinfectant, heavy duty trash bags, bags of cement, and a construction bucket with a lid.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, all items that you could use for completely non-nefarious reasons, but he's
Sure.
purchasing these a day after his wife went missing. So it just does it, again, all circumstantial, but
Right.
not looking great.
Not looking good at all. And also allegedly, you talked about how Brad had a conversation in the Home Depot parking lot with another customer where he asked for directions to the nearest dump.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is again, uh, I've had conversations where I've asked people where a dump was in my
Yep.
life. But when you're doing that in the context of buying those things and the day after your wife goes missing, after a large public argument, they were also a neighbor reported to the police a couple of days later that he heard them arguing, Brad and Suzanne, outside of their house, kind of near the neighbor's house, and directly across from their house. And their neighborhood is really nice, right? It's a lot of kind of uh, century old mansions that look a lot like the Hollywood Hills, built around the same time, and they've got a very nice house that's kind of well equipped for hosting parties, which they did relatively often. And directly across from their home is a large wooded area. The neighbor said that he heard them arguing and then going into the wooded area. And then he said that he heard Brad chasing her and that her screaming at some point. The neighbor also said that he saw Brad's truck leaving a couple of hours later for some extended period of time before coming back. So again, if you're a prosecutor in this case, it's not the easiest case to prosecute with a no found victim.
Correct.
But it all of these things, asking for directions to a dump, buying the very specific items that he was purchasing, driving around with large items in the back of his truck, and then having those items disappear. And then the other thing that is what has been mentioned publicly, the other evidence that was found was a reticulating saw, like something
Oof.
like a jigsaw that reportedly had Suzanne's DNA on it.
Oh gosh.
So again,
That's,
really
yeah,
not looking
horrific.
good. And around the time this evidence is coming out, before Brad was arrested, his brother Barton put out a public statement essentially disavowing him from the family, saying that Brad
Wow.
was not raised this way. um, this is a very upper echelon society in San Antonio, and the appearance, what you look like to your neighbors is very, very important. And as I was going through this story, as I was talking to people involved, both with the club and with this neighborhood, which they're about a mile apart, it's kind of all one small town in the very wealthy subset of a very large town in San Antonio. And we can talk about that kind of subculture of San Antonio Rich in a second. But talking to so many people there, secrecy is just built into the culture. Um, and one of their daughters, their oldest daughter, has come out since this saying, this was an abusive relationship. A lot of people in the community knew that it was an abusive relationship and chose not to mention it, chose not to say something. And the daughter was particularly appalled at how many people acted surprised that ultimately her mother likely befell very terrible circumstances. Um, and
Yeah,
that was really shocking.
I was so surprised when I was reading the article, to come across the line that you're in the neighborhood and the cops get called on you, right?
Yeah, I'd only
And
knocked on a couple of doors, and two police cars showed up and detained me in the street. Wanted to know who I was and what I was doing. And when I explained I was media, and I certainly wasn't trying to bother anybody, any of the victims, any of the
right.
family members, that I'm just trying to talk to as many people as possible. They understood the story. While it has not gotten a ton of national attention, has gotten an enormous amount of local attention.
Yeah.
So they're very familiar with the media going over there, and the judge in the case has since, well, actually before then, ordered a gag order, put
Mm,
forth a gag order in the case. So yeah, and I think the story mentions it, as if people needed more reason to be quiet.
right. I thought it was interesting that police told you by way of explaining why they were there that it was a see something, say something community.
Right. Well, that's exactly what he said. This is a see
If
something, say
only that
something
had been
community.
true for Suzanne Simpson,
Right, and
right?
my immediate response was, "Well, that wasn't that night."
Yeah.
Somebody, certainly heard something and didn't call the police immediately, and had they called the police immediately, it's totally possible that Suzanne Simpson would still be alive. We're presuming at this point that she's dead, and her husband has been charged with murder.
Yeah, her neighbor's account that's in that affidavit of the fight, I mean, it sounds like not only was it loud, was it very obviously like a physical encounter, but it also went on for some time.
Yes,
And
prolonged.
no one was calling 911, no one was calling the local police. They didn't even go out there to see why people were screaming. I mean, it's really sad to think that this happened within earshot of so many people.
Yeah. So I went through that wooded area and just kind of tried to get a sense of how close it was and how many houses would have been nearby. And there are a lot. It's a very nice community and the houses are very expensive, but they're also not that far apart from each other. Right? These houses were built at a time where houses were built closer than they are in most modern suburbs.
Mm.
And so the idea that people, other people who have not come forward to the police, or at least were not in that affidavit, almost certainly heard something that night. And people almost certainly heard other events prior to this. Um,
And does Brad have an alibi for the time that Suzanne went missing? Does he claim that he was doing something else?
he's not made any public statements. I think he spoke to the police very briefly one time and then not much. Um, he also, there's some kind of tangential charges of weapons and evidence tampering. He at some point texted a friend of his to get rid of a gun, which, whether it was involved in in this case or not, he understood that it was not going to look good and was possibly illegal to own.
Yeah.
Um, and so those text messages have become evidence. And the friend also got arrested.
Wow. Um and I understand, yeah, Brad was initially charged with, was it aggravated assault
Yeah, I
on
think the youngest daughter, told police that she witnessed the father hurting the mom. I think hurting her elbow. The One of the daughters said that there was a hole in the wall near the stairs, where the mother had fallen after being pushed down the stairs. So it was
Wow.
enough. I think the police obviously suspected the husband from the very beginning,
Yeah.
but that was enough to hold him initially. After, I think it was a couple of days after Suzanne went missing, they arrested him for that.
And then, like you said, eventually the murder charges came down. So,
Yeah, about 2 months after, Suzanne was missing, Brad's charges were upgraded to murder. And
are
so
there
it's gonna
any
be
yeah.
it's, if it does go to trial, it's gonna be a really big, interesting case. His family does have money, so they can afford, some pretty good Texas attorneys, and the prosecution certainly has an uphill battle. Um, it's a completely circumstantial case. They're again, like, we don't even know to this moment what happened to Suzanne,
Yeah.
unless they have evidence that's not been made public. Uh, you know, we don't even know what county her remains might be in.
Yeah, it's just an unbelievable case in terms of you have all this evidence, you have all of this circumstantial evidence of a woman going missing in the middle of the night. And then you have her husband behaving very suspiciously, but at the same time, no body. And, people are allowed to, as adults, go off, anywhere that they want. I don't think anyone believes that Suzanne Simpson left on her own will, but I could see how the defense would try to point out the fact that, we don't know where she is. We don't have any proof that she's dead.
Right, you can't say with any authority that she didn't do that definitively.
Right.
Right, it's just highly unlikely. There are also, some other lighter bits of evidence that Suzanne called her mother the night that she went missing and said that she and Brad had gotten into a fight, and that Brad, according to the mother, that Brad had hurt her. The mother was planning on asking Suzanne to move in with her with the youngest daughter. Brad reportedly called his brother to apologize at some point too, in the middle of, at some point during all of this.
Interesting.
It's not clear. I think that Brad's brother Barton is a member of the Argyle, so it's possible that that's the reason that they were there at the party that evening. But again, that's not that the club was certainly not able to confirm that.
Sure, sure. And in addition to the murder charges, the aggravated assault charges, I remember there were also destroying evidence and tampering with a corpse, right?
Yeah, yeah, and not an enormous amount of evidence in the affidavits for those. So it just, it feels like we have kind of just the tip of the iceberg here. It's not clear what police have or don't have at this point. There has not been like a big disclosure or discovery phase that's gone public. So and that might be for the purposes of trying to negotiate some sort of plea or a strategic trial approach too. Who knows?
Yeah, it is interesting to think that they are willing to charge him with murder without a body. They must be pretty confident in their case.
Yeah, I mean, how many times you've seen an enormous amount of these cases? How often has it been without a body? Right,
Yeah,
very rare.
extremely rare. And usually if it is without a body, they would charge like with kidnapping, not with murder. So I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be. I don't know the prosecutors in Bear County. I don't know their general competency. But just as somebody who follows these kinds of cases, I think it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yes. So
And this world, of course, this very wealthy part of San Antonio, I think some people are probably looking forward to the case, but it's the likelihood of it kind of pulling the curtain back even further on this world of images and secrecy and wealth and a kind of quiet enclave that does not see something and then say something all the time, certainly, at least
right.
not unless you're talking about outsiders. um, it's possible that the trial could pull the curtain back on that just a little bit more too.
Yeah, we will all be watching to see what happens next in the investigation of Suzanne Simpson. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Mike. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone reads your article in Town and Country or listens to it on Apple News Plus because it's got so much good information that you can't find anywhere else.
Thank you so much for having me too, and obviously great talking to you every time we talk.
All right, take care. Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.